Okay, section 2.3, part C, we're looking to write the equation of a line when given the graph of a line. So again, we're going to go with that slope-intercept form, which is y equals mx plus b, and remember the y, the equals, the x, and the plus, those are a part of the generic equation. So really all we're doing is we're hunting for the slope and for the slope, the y-intercept, which is the y value on the where it crosses the y-axis. All right, so I'm actually going to duplicate that equation. Whoops, sorry, wrong thing. I'm going to duplicate this equation here, and we just need to find that m and b. So if I find m and b, I can fill it in and be done. So m, actually let's start with b because that one's a little clearer on this graph. So b is the y value where it crosses the x-axis. So here it's crossing at the x is 0 and the y is 3. So b equals 3. And to find the slope, I'm going to do rise over run. So we have that formula that works fine if I have 2 points, but I could still find 2 points. Like I could find a second point right there and use the formula. But what I like to do when I have a picture is actually just kind of count units, rise over run. This graph counts by 1, so make sure you check your axis labels and make sure you're counting by the same thing the axis is counting on. But I can see my rise to go from this point to this point. I like to look for 2 points that cross somewhere on the in a grid, like here or here, so it's easy to identify what that number is. So I'll actually go from this point to this point. Always go from left to right, rise over run, and then I'm going to rise first. So to go to that other point from this point, I get the rise is a change in 1 unit and the run is 2 units. So my rise over run is 1 over 2. I could get those points. I could see that this point, the first point was 2, 4, and the second point was 4, 5. And if I use the formula for slope, I'll get the same answer. But I think counting works well when I have the actual graph. So now I have the m and the b, so I can just plug that straight into m is 1/2 and b is 3. And everything else in that equation is generic. That's just listed as a variable. It's a positive 3, so my plus sign is fine for my final answer. And there we go. I want to do a second example too with a negative slope. So let's look at example 3 now. So I'm going to start with that same generic equation, and we just have to find that m and the b. So to find m, that's rise over run. So let me zoom in on this graph so I can see a little better. And I want to look for 2 places that it intersects the grid, like where it crosses a crossbar, so that it's easier to count. So it intersects here, and here, and here, and here, here, here. So I'll just pick these bottom 2. Pick any 2, and it doesn't really matter which 2 you pick. I'd like to pick 2 close together so I don't have to reduce the fraction. So oops, you know what I did though? I ran before I rised. So going from left to right, so I start with this point, and my rise is going down. It's actually a fall. But we still got a rise, but it's a negative rise, so it's a negative 2. And my run is 1. So that is negative 2 over 1. which means that my slope is -2. And my y-intercept, that's where I look to see where does it intersect the y-axis and what is that y value. So it intersects the y-axis at the point 0, 5, which tells me that b is 5. So now I'm just going to plug this into my generic equation, plug in the 5 for slope, the 5 for intercept, the -2 for slope, and the y equals, and the x and b is positive, so that plus sign works good. And there's my slope-intercept form. This is a good example of when you might see the slope, the mx and the b switch positions. So you might see this written as 5 minus 2x, so that way you have a leading positive in front. This is also correct. Notice the minus, that's a minus, or -2 stays with the x, and the 5 stays as a constant. So 2 is a coefficient, or -2 is a coefficient, and 5 is a constant. So both those answers are correct. This is the y equals mx plus b form, and this is the y equals b plus mx form, which both are correct and used in different ways.